A man who dedicated his life to crafting a legacy and managing a vast empire found himself facing a profound challenge after a tragic accident confined him to a wheelchair. In this new reality, he unearthed something far more disturbing than his physical constraints. He amassed great wealth, yet lacked a fulfilling existence. Unseen in a realm that once centered on him, he encountered apathy and exclusion in manners he had never experienced prior, until an unforeseen gesture of compassion from a determined waitress transformed everything. She possessed nothing to offer but her empathy. Her selflessness opened a door to an unforeseen opportunity, one that would transform her life in ways she never anticipated. Raymond Caldwell had once been a figure of authority, a person whose mere presence could bring a room full of executives to a hush, captivated by his every utterance. His empire was constructed with meticulous attention to detail, unwavering discipline, and a steadfast conviction that time equated to wealth and that efficiency was paramount. For decades, he navigated the cutthroat landscape of business, managing acquisitions, mergers, and corporate takeovers that solidified his reputation among the wealthiest individuals in the state. His existence had been a tempest of gatherings, corporate lunches, and journeys on private jets, an unending pursuit of the next significant opportunity, the next growth, the next triumph that would enhance his legacy. Despite his immense wealth and power, and the respect he garnered, there had always been little room for anything beyond that. That was prior to the incident. Raymond was completely blindsided. In one fleeting instant, he found himself comfortably ensconced in the rear of his opulent vehicle, perusing market analyses on his tablet as his chauffeur expertly maneuvered the well-trodden path to his urban workplace. Then came the overwhelming sound of tires screeching, followed by the gut-wrenching clash of metal colliding, and after that silence. Upon awakening, everything felt different. He felt different. His legs, once robust and reliable, now lay powerless beneath him. The medical professionals indicated that the spinal injury would be lasting. There would be no extraordinary revival, no healing that could bring back what had been taken away. The individual who once wielded power over an empire now found himself unable to control his own physical form. Initially, Raymond was reluctant to acknowledge it. He immersed himself in his tasks, firmly believing that he could still manage his domain from the ease of his estate. Yet, a change had occurred. The board, once steadfast and devoted, had started to make choices independently of him. Apprehension spread among investors. The figure they had once regarded as an indomitable powerhouse now sat as a fragile elder in a wheelchair, no longer the colossus of commerce he had once been. In the span of a year, the unavoidable transpired. He found himself ousted from the very company he had founded, his shares acquired, his once significant influence now relegated to a mere footnote in the corporate landscape he had played a pivotal role in shaping. In an instant, the life he had devoted himself to vanished. At the age of 70, Raymond Caldwell discovered he was left with nothing but time on his hands. It is a moment to dwell in his magnificent abode, enveloped by tranquility. It was a poignant moment to observe the individuals he had once regarded as colleagues, allies, and even friends, gradually fade from his life, their communications dwindling until silence reigned. It's a moment to ponder the truth that, in spite of all his achievements, he found himself alone, with no one who genuinely valued him for who he was beyond his contributions. The nurses who entered each day to provide assistance were competent yet emotionally distant, performing their duties with the same clinical precision he had once respected in his staff. The members of his household maintained a demeanor of politeness and duty, yet they were simply that, staff. They adhered to commands, attended to his requirements, yet never inquired about his well-being, never engaged in conversation beyond what was essential. For the first time in his life, Raymond understood that he had devoted decades to accumulating wealth, yet had never truly lived. He possessed strength yet lacked direction. One morning, as he gazed out the window of his study, observing the world continue its relentless pace without him, he arrived at a decision. He would venture outside. He refused to remain confined to his estate, ensnared in this self-imposed solitude. He would embark on a journey into the city, solitary, devoid of his staff, his driver, and the meticulously arranged routine that had shaped his life for an extended period. He would witness firsthand what the world appeared to be when he was no longer its focal point. Clad in a button-down shirt and a light jacket, he rolled himself out of the grand doors of his estate for the first time in months. The refreshing morning air stood in sharp relief to the clinical, regulated atmosphere he had become so familiar with. It was invigorating, nearly startling, as he navigated his wheelchair along the sleek stone-paved driveway, his hands clutching the wheels with determination. The streets outside his gated estate buzzed with activity. As people hurried to their jobs, mothers carefully ushered their children through crosswalks, and shop owners prepared for the day ahead. After decades of residing in this city and pouring millions into its enterprises, he experienced an unfamiliar sensation, one of estrangement in the very place he once called home. He strolled toward a restaurant he once adored, a luxurious venue that had consistently kept the finest table just for him. He was curious to find out if they still remembered him, if they would continue to treat him as they had prior to the accident. As he neared the entrance, deftly guiding his chair toward the majestic double doors, the wheels unexpectedly snagged on the uneven pavement just beyond the threshold. He pressed on, yet the chair hardly budged. He found himself in a bind. A slender queue of patrons had started to gather behind him, their whispers tinged with impatience. Some exhaled loudly, glancing at their watches, shifting restlessly as they awaited their turn. Suddenly, the restaurant manager made an entrance. Raymond identified him immediately, a man who had previously gone to great lengths to guarantee that each of his visits was impeccable. Yet in that moment, his gaze held no familiarity, no respect. Instead, there was merely annoyance. "Excuse me, sir, but you're obstructing the entrance," the man remarked, his tone tinged with annoyance. Raymond began to speak, to clarify his thoughts, but before he could utter a word, the manager advanced and seized the handles of his wheelchair, abruptly dragging him away from the entrance. The movement was abrupt, unsettling, robbing him of any remaining semblance of dignity. "You must get out of the way," the man insisted, his voice rising, treating Raymond like a mere hindrance, something to be cleared away. "We have customers waiting." For a long moment, Raymond remained still, a sense of humiliation enveloping him like a heavy fog. Once, he was the figure who strode through those doors without a moment's hesitation, met with warm smiles, his table perpetually reserved, his arrival always embraced. Yet, at this moment, he had become merely an anonymous elderly figure confined to a wheelchair. In silence, he pivoted his chair and departed. Humiliated and hollow, Raymond pushed himself away from the restaurant, his hands gripping the wheels of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He felt a restless urgency, an instinctive pull to escape, to distance himself from that place, though the destination remained a mystery. The whispers of dissatisfied customers lingered in his mind, the condescending words of the restaurant manager striking him like a blow to his ego. The world had transformed around him, or maybe, he acknowledged with a touch of bitterness, it had always existed like this. He had merely been too formidable to see it. The morning sun ascended, spreading golden rays throughout the city, yet Raymond remained untouched by its glow. The ache of hunger clawed at his insides, yet he felt no urge to go back to his estate, where breakfast awaited him, served without hesitation, where food would be set before him as if he were merely an object in the room, provided for but never truly seen. He desired, craved, a place to dine that exuded warmth, where he could relax as just another person. His eyes wandered over the street. At that moment he caught sight of it. A quaint, modest diner rested on the corner, its expansive windows slightly misted from the warmth emanating from the bustling kitchen within. The sign above the door was worn, its neon letters wavering hesitantly between Ruby's Diner and a muted, buzzing light. It was a location he had never observed previously, the sort of venue he would have once passed by without a moment's consideration. This establishment, in stark contrast to the high-end restaurant that had just denied him entry, exuded a sense of warmth and familiarity. It was the sort of venue where patrons gathered not merely to dine, but to truly be a part of something larger. It was precisely what he required. He pivoted his wheelchair toward the intersection, Yet upon reaching the curb, he was starkly reminded of the challenges that had transformed something as ordinary as crossing the street into a formidable task. The pavement dipped and rose unpredictably, and with every push of his wheels, it felt as though he was waging a war against the very force of gravity. His arms tensed as he attempted to push himself ahead, yet the wheels held firm against his efforts. A distant honk pierced the air, the city bustling around him, and for the first time in his life, Raymond felt completely insignificant. Then came a voice. Looking for assistance? The voice belonged to a young woman, confident yet nurturing, carrying a hint of sincere worry. Raymond turned his head and found himself gazing into a pair of deep brown eyes, framed by tight curls gathered into a low ponytail. She appeared youthful, perhaps in her mid-20s, her dark skin radiant and luminous in the morning light. Her attire didn't resemble that of a corporate employee or someone hurrying about. She donned a modest blue button-down paired with dark jeans. A name tag affixed with precision to her shirt displayed the name, Maya. Before he could protest, she had already moved beside him, her hands softly clasping the handles of his wheelchair. It's a bit challenging, isn't it? These sidewalks weren't designed for wheelchairs, she remarked, her tone casual and unfazed, as if assisting a stranger was simply a part of her daily ritual. Raymond experienced a fleeting sensation that eluded his understanding. What is pride? Shame? Yet he offered a slight nod. He confessed that he was attempting to reach that diner. Maya smiled broadly. Indeed, fortune smiles upon you. That is my place of employment. Let's go. I will ensure you arrive at your destination. With unexpected grace, she navigated the wheelchair off the curb, steering him across the street with a skillful assurance. In contrast to the others at the restaurant, she appeared unfazed by his presence, not regarding him as a bother. Her expression held no pity, no condescension, only kindness, given freely and without expectation. Upon arriving at the front entrance of Ruby's diner, Maya gracefully pulled open the door, allowing him to enter at his own pace. The diner's interior matched Raymond's vision perfectly, inviting, a touch weathered, yet filled with warmth. The aroma of crispy bacon and freshly brewed coffee wafted through the space, intertwining with the soft murmur of chatter and the sporadic clinking of dishes from the kitchen. The individuals present were not clad in costly attire, nor were they anxiously glancing at their timepieces. They were individuals behind the wheel of trucks, laborers on construction sites, young parents navigating life with children in hand, everyday people leading everyday lives. Maya led him to a table by the window. "Is this all right?" she inquired. Raymond nodded, and as he got comfortable, he suddenly recognized that this was the first occasion in years when he had been given the choice of where to sit instead of being assigned to the most esteemed table by default. Maya presented him with a menu, but before he could even unfold it, she flashed a knowing smile. "First time here, huh?" Raymond let out a soft, unexpected chuckle, a genuine laugh that caught him off guard. "Is that so obvious?" "Just a tad," she confessed with a playful smile. "Allow me to simplify your choice. The standout item on the menu is the house special. Eggs, bacon, toast, and a side of home fries. It's straightforward, yet it truly satisfies. And believe me, the coffee here surpasses anything else in town." Raymond paused briefly before giving a nod of agreement. "That sounds good." Maya quickly noted the order, then looked back at him. "Cream and sugar." "Black," Raymond replied. She offered him a thumbs up. "Great choice. I'll be right back." As she vanished into the kitchen, Raymond exhaled slowly, surveying the diner. The atmosphere was devoid of tension, free from hushed conversations about him, and absent of watchful gazes that suggested he was out of place. He was merely another patron in this place, another individual in search of sustenance. It seemed ordinary. For the first time in ages, normalcy felt like a precious gift. Raymond sat in still reflection, his fingers idly tracing the rim of the laminated menu. The diner thrummed with the lively sounds of breakfast being dished out, conversations weaving into the warm tapestry of morning life, the clinking of coffee cups, the scrape of utensils against plates, and the sporadic bursts of laughter echoing through the air. It was a melody he hadn't known he longed for. The atmosphere within Ruby's diner seemed to create a barrier against the chilling apathy of the outside world, offering a comforting refuge in a city that had otherwise forgotten his presence. A few moments later, Maya reappeared, expertly balancing a steaming cup of black coffee in one hand and a small plate of toast in the other. She placed them down with a fluid grace, her actions seamless and unstrained. "Here you go, fresh off the pot," she said, sliding the coffee toward him. "Food will be up in a few minutes, but I figured you might want something to sip on while you wait." Raymond nodded, taken aback by the ease of their exchange. He had visited numerous dining establishments, attended to by servers who were skilled in the art of courtesy, ready to fulfill his every desire. Yet an unseen divide always lingered: wealth, rank, anticipation. With Maya, there was absolutely none of that. She regarded him just as she would with anyone else, and he felt a surprising sense of gratitude for that. Raising the cup to his lips, he savored a deliberate sip, allowing the deep bitterness to linger on his tongue. She was indeed correct. The coffee was delightful, surpassing the exorbitantly priced concoctions he once sipped in executive lounges. He set the cup down, his fingers wrapping around the ceramic, and took a moment to just be free from expectations and obligations. Maya glided through the diner, replenishing cups, jotting down orders, and sharing laughter with patrons as if they were old friends. She exuded a natural warmth, a presence that enveloped others in comfort and welcome. Raymond observed her as she playfully greeted an older man at the counter with a light elbow bump, then turned to tousle the hair of a young boy seated in a booth with his mother. She wasn't merely dishing out meals. She was woven into the very essence of this place, an integral thread in the tapestry that bound it all together. The sound of something striking the table broke through his thoughts. As he glanced downward, he noticed that his hand had sent the spoon tumbling from the saucer. He let out a sharp breath, feeling the sting of frustration at the betrayal of his fingers, the weakness in his hands turning even the simplest tasks into daunting challenges. He extended his hand to grasp it, yet before he could, Maya appeared beside him. "No need to fret," she remarked, effortlessly retrieving the dropped spoon with a warm smile. She slipped away behind the counter for a brief moment, only to re-emerge with a fresh one in hand. "It occurs frequently." Raymond paused, observing her as she set the new spoon beside his cup. The manner in which she executed it, with unwavering confidence and no pause for reflection, caused a constriction in his throat. "You didn't need to do that," he murmured softly. Maya gave a slight shrug. "Absolutely, I did." She tilted her head slightly, examining him as though the question had caught her off guard. "It was a straightforward assertion," she remarked, as if it were the most evident truth imaginable. "That's precisely how it ought to be." He gazed at her, searching his memory for the last occasion when someone had acted selflessly on his behalf. The understanding sank into his chest, heavy and unyielding. A voice summoned Maya from the kitchen, and she offered a brief nod before making her way back to the counter. He observed her departure, noting the fluidity of her movements and the subtle grace with which she held herself, instilling a sense of lightness in the atmosphere surrounding her. She was unaware of his identity. She was completely unaware of the extent of his wealth, the influence he had once commanded, and yet, in those fleeting 20 minutes, she bestowed upon him a level of dignity that many had failed to offer over the span of 2 long years. A moment later, she came back with his plate, placing it in front of him with the same effortless attention she had displayed earlier. "How delightful," she remarked, gently tapping the edge of the plate. "I trust this will resonate with you." Raymond grasped his fork, the aroma of buttery toast and crispy bacon enveloping the air around them. He took a bite, the warmth of the food enveloping him, a comforting reminder of just how ravenous he had truly been. It was straightforward and genuine, yet it turned out to be the finest meal he had enjoyed in quite a while. As he completed his task, he instinctively reached for his wallet, but Maya gently placed a hand on his forearm, halting him before he could retrieve any cash. "I'll take care of it," she said, Raymond blinked, truly astonished. There's no need for you to do that. She smiled brightly. Absolutely, I do. Wemmel, it seemed you were in need of someone to. The answer was so clear, so straightforward, that he found himself at a loss for words. He had never experienced kindness that was pure, without strings attached or hidden clauses. He had never experienced someone gazing at him and recognizing a human being instead of a dilemma, or even worse, a nuisance. After what seemed like an eternity, Raymond experienced an unfamiliar sensation awaken within his chest. He found himself uncertain about what it could be. Yet, it resonated deeply with a sense of optimism. Raymond lingered in silence, his fingers gently poised on the table's edge, gazing at the vacant plate that lay before him. The comforting essence of the meal remained within him, yet an additional sensation, more profound, had taken root inside. A subtle sense of appreciation, strange yet unmistakable. He had spent years in dining rooms where the wine flowed endlessly, where the dishes were served beneath silver domes with waiters standing by in silence. Yet he couldn't recall the last time he had experienced such a profound sense of fullness as he did now. It was more than merely the cuisine. Maya's gaze held a depth that transcended pity or impatience. It was infused with a warmth that spoke of true kindness. An uncomplicated, seamless gesture of kindness, offered freely and without anticipation. Maya had seamlessly transitioned, gliding between tables, sharing laughter with patrons, replenishing coffee cups as if this morning, was merely another chapter in her daily narrative. Yet for Raymond it transcended mere significance. It had been ages since anyone had truly acknowledged his presence. As he reached for his wallet once more, resolute in his intention to leave at least a tip, he sensed a gentle yet firm hand on the handle of his wheelchair. He glanced over his shoulder and spotted Maya lurking behind him, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. "Good effort," she remarked, shaking her head. "I already mentioned that this one is my treat." Raymond let out a soft laugh, shaking his head gently. "You're not gonna let me come out on top, are you?" "Not today," she declared, gracefully maneuvering around him while keeping the door ajar. "However, if you genuinely wish to atone for this, simply return to us again soon. That would suffice." Her casual tone, devoid of any expectation, caused him to hesitate. Her words were not just courteous. She truly meant them. Raymond offered a subtle nod before maneuvering himself toward the door, the morning air invigorating against his skin as he transitioned onto the sidewalk. The world beyond seemed transformed from the moment he first stepped in. The burden he had brought into the diner, the sting of that initial rejection at the restaurant lingered, yet it had transformed, creating space for something new. As he navigated the street in his wheelchair, the city unfolded around him as it always did, people in suits hurriedly passing by, cars blaring their horns in frustration, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee blending with the sporadic breeze that swept through, carrying the essence of urban life. Yet this time he truly observed, he recognized the nuances. An older woman stands at the bus stop, adjusting the strap on her purse. A teenager hurries across the street, balancing a tray of iced coffees. Nearby, a construction worker shares a laugh with his coworker while leaning against a steel beam. These were the individuals he had neglected for years, the ones who had consistently been present while he had been preoccupied with transitioning from one meeting to another, too absorbed to recognize the world outside his own aspirations. Upon his return to the estate, silence welcomed him like a familiar friend, extending through the vast, vacant corridors and enveloping the meticulously arranged furnishings and exquisite artwork. The personnel glided through the space, deft and discreet, their whispers barely audible as they fulfilled their responsibilities. No one inquired about his whereabouts. It appeared that his departure went completely unnoticed by anyone. He entered his study, his fingers unconsciously gliding over the polished mahogany surface of his desk. The shelves that adorned the walls were brimming with leather-bound tomes he had never found the time to explore. The fireplace remained cold, unbothered by the passage of time. A decade ago, this room served as his command center, the space where agreements were forged, where wealth was constructed. Now it seemed like a display in a gallery, carefully maintained yet devoid of vitality. His eyes wandered to the expansive window that framed the bustling cityscape. From this vantage point, he could observe the skyline, the majestic structures, the streets that had once seemed to be his own. After years of dedication, he meticulously crafted a legacy, determined that his name would endure through time. But for what purpose? His company had progressed without him, the colleagues he had collaborated with had scarcely glanced back. And now, here he stood, a man with more riches than he could ever exhaust, and yet, despite the influence he had once commanded, he had never experienced such, helpless. And yet there stood Maya. The mere idea of her sparked a flicker of something unforeseen, curiosity, not solely directed at her, but at the essence of her existence, the grace with which she moved through life, and the way she discussed her commitment to aiding others as if it were as instinctive as inhaling. She never inquired about his identity. She was indifferent. For the first time in ages, it brought a sense of relief. He reclined in his chair, his thoughts swirling around a notion, a concept that gradually started to crystallize. Maya had assisted him effortlessly, with no thought of reward. Maybe it was finally his turn to follow suit. The idea hung in Raymond's mind, echoing long after he had stepped through his front door. He devoted years to making choices that impacted countless individuals, sanctioning million-dollar agreements with a mere stroke of a pen. Still, he couldn't dispel the sense that the most straightforward act, a meal offered without any strings attached, had resonated more profoundly than all those commercial exchanges. And then came Maya. He had encountered kindness in the past, yet hers stood apart. It wasn't the superficial kindness he had seen in corporate environments, where giving back was merely a way to reduce tax liabilities. It was purely authentic, free from societal pressures or hidden agendas. It was a different experience altogether, seamless, intuitive, genuine. That night, Raymond found himself unable to drift into slumber. Instead, he found himself reflecting on the way Maya had beamed at every customer who entered the diner. She navigated the space with an ease that suggested a deep connection, as if it were more than mere employment to her. He reflected on her willingness to cover his meal without a second thought, despite her evident financial constraints. In that fleeting moment, he failed to grasp the subtle hint in her gaze, perhaps a hint of exhaustion, or the unspoken burden of unshared responsibilities. The following morning, Raymond summoned his assistant, a man named Thomas who had been in his service for almost 15 years. "I need you to take me somewhere," Raymond said as Thomas entered the study, maintaining his usual composed and professional demeanor. "Absolutely, where shall we head to, sir?" Raymond paused briefly before responding, "Ruby's Diner." Thomas's expression remained steadfast, showing little to no change. He had been conditioned to accept commands without hesitation, yet the peculiar nature of the request sparked a glimmer of intrigue in his gaze. He offered no explanation. He quietly permitted Thomas to guide his wheelchair through the majestic entrance of the estate, towards the awaiting town car. In an instant, they found themselves on the road, traversing the city that Raymond had once governed, yet now seemed almost unrecognizable to him. Upon reaching the diner, Raymond chose to linger outside, observing for a moment before stepping inside. In that moment, his gaze fell upon it. Maya was already at her task, yet the tired droop of her shoulders revealed that she had not enjoyed much respite. The early morning rush had commenced, and she navigated between tables, balancing plates and replenishing coffee cups with the same vibrancy and kindness she had displayed to him the previous day. Yet now she stood outside, observing without drawing attention. Raymond noticed the details he had overlooked previously. Her uniform was tidy yet somewhat dulled, the material showing signs of wear from frequent use. Her shoes, reliable and robust, had certainly experienced more glorious moments. And yet none of that appeared to affect her in the slightest. With a warm smile, she welcomed each customer, ensuring that everyone felt valued, as if her role in serving them was not merely a duty but a source of true pride. Then he noticed something else, something that caused his heart to constrict. Amidst the tables, during fleeting instances when she believed she was unseen, Maya's smile wavered. It was subtle, merely a brief glimmer, a fleeting shadow that danced across her features before she composed herself. Yet Raymond saw it clearly. It was a profound weariness that transcended mere fatigue. It was the sort that resulted from bearing too much weight for an extended period. Raymond dedicated his life to observing others, grasping their motivations and the challenges they encountered. He could see at a glance that Maya was facing challenges. Yet in spite of it all, she managed to extend her kindness. He had witnessed more than enough. "Let's go in," Raymond murmured softly. As Thomas pushed him through the entrance, Maya's face instantly brightened the moment they crossed the threshold. "Well, look who's back," she remarked with a smile, expertly balancing a tray in one hand as she drew near. "Looks like you couldn't say no to the coffee, right?" Raymond wore a sly grin. "It's starting to resonate with me." Maya placed the tray on a nearby table, then redirected her focus to him. "Are you looking for your regular order?" He let out a soft laugh. "I was unaware that I had developed a routine." She gave a playful shrug. "Things move quickly in this place." Raymond paused for a moment, then turned his gaze toward Thomas. "I would really appreciate the chance to chat with you whenever you have a moment to spare." Something in his tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation, as the playful spark in her eyes faded just a touch. She inclined her head, brushed her hands against her apron, and motioned toward an unoccupied booth. "Just a moment, please. I'll just take a moment to deliver this order." Upon her return, she gracefully settled into the seat opposite him, propping her elbows on the table. "Very well, Mr. Caldwell. What thoughts are swirling in your head?" Raymond observed her intently for a moment before he began to speak. "I'm curious to learn more about you, Maya." She arched an eyebrow. "Could you clarify what you mean?" "Text. I mean, you did something for me yesterday that you didn't have to do," he remarked. "It's clear to me that this isn't just a fleeting occurrence. You assist others, not out of obligation, but because it reflects your true self." He took a moment, selecting his subsequent words with precision. "Yet, I sense there's a weight you're bearing that you haven't fully revealed." Maya's expression remained steady at first, yet he noticed the faint alteration, the slight tightening of her jaw, the way she took a deeper breath than normal before replying. "I'm not really sure about any of that," she replied, giving a slight shrug. "Sure, it's true that challenges exist, but that's just how life goes, isn't it? Everyone has their own story to tell." Raymond maintained his gaze. "Share with me." She paused for a moment, then exhaled deeply. "My mother is unwell." She confessed that she has been for some time. She resides in a nursing facility located just a few miles away from here. I make an effort to visit whenever possible, but with my work shifts and the need to manage expenses, it can be quite challenging. Raymond absorbed every word, allowing the silence to fill the space without interruption. Maya continued, recounting how she once juggled 3 jobs just to keep us afloat. Always maintained a positive demeanor, never allowing me to sense any hardships, even in difficult times. Now it's my time to look after her. Her smile was subtle, yet it carried a certain sense of longing. She always reminded me that regardless of the challenges we face, one must never cease to embody kindness. You consistently make an effort to be there for others. Raymond reclined in his chair, taking in her words. He had lived his life among individuals who acted solely for their own gain, yet here stood Maya, a person with every justification to harbor resentment, to act with selfishness, and yet, she opted for kindness. In that moment, he resolved to take action. "I wish to assist," he stated plainly. Maya's eyes fluttered open. "Assistance needed?" "Absolutely." His voice remained calm, resolute. "I want to handle your mother's medical bills, your debt, and everything else that stands in the way of you living the life you truly deserve." For the first time since their encounter, Maya appeared genuinely taken aback. She gazed at him intently, examining his features as though attempting to discern whether this was merely a prank. "What is the reason?" Raymond offered her a fleeting smile. He reiterated her sentiments, emphasizing the importance of mutual support among individuals. Maya chuckled softly, her head shaking in astonishment. "You have no idea who I am." Raymond locked eyes with her. "I have sufficient knowledge." After a prolonged silence, she finally let out a breath, her head shaking gently. "Mr. Caldwell, I simply cannot accept that amount from you." "Indeed you can," he replied, "and you shall." Maya released a gentle laugh, yet this time it carried an additional note, a tenderness intertwined with a hint of hesitation. "Are you really serious?" "I exist." She cast her gaze downward at the table, releasing a sharp breath. As she lifted her gaze once more, a subtle shimmer danced in her eyes, yet her smile persisted unwaveringly. "I'm at a loss for words." "Just say yes," Raymond said plainly. For the first time in what felt like ages, Maya allowed someone to lend her a hand. Maya remained in a state of disbelief, her palms pressed firmly against the table, seeking to anchor herself in the moment. Raymond had just presented her with an unexpected opportunity, a beacon of hope, a means to escape the relentless loop of anxiety and fatigue that had defined her existence for as long as she could recall. The hospital bills from her mother loomed large, the growing debt gnawed at her peace, and the relentless sensation that no matter how diligently she toiled, she remained perpetually one step behind. Everything might vanish with just one utterance. She parted her lips, then sealed them again, gently shaking her head as if to dispel the fog of her thoughts. This is unbelievable," she finally murmured, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "You hardly know me. After all, you have no obligations towards me." Raymond took a deep breath, his hands gently placed on the arms of his wheelchair. His gaze held firm, resolute. "That's the essence, Maya," he expressed. "The truest gestures of goodwill aren't about being indebted to anyone. Your assistance came without obligation, not influenced by my identity or any anticipation of reward, but simply because of the inherent goodness within you." He took a moment, allowing his words to linger in the air. "Allow me to extend the same courtesy to you." Maya gulped, feeling a sudden constriction in her throat. "I'm at a loss for words." "Just don't say a word," Raymond said quietly. "Let me assist you." She gazed at her hands, fingers gently curling against the weathered surface of the table. The rational side of her urged her to resist, to assert that she was capable of managing everything independently, that she had dedicated years to being self-sufficient and had no intention of altering that now. Yet another aspect, the weary, subtly yearning aspect, murmured an alternative truth. "Have you considered the possibility of accepting assistance from someone?" Only this time, she glanced back at Raymond, examining him with a newfound intensity. He wasn't merely presenting financial support. He was extending an opportunity, a means to exhale, a path to escape the burden she had borne for far too long. With a measured pace, she inclined her head, signaling her agreement. Raymond smiled, a smile that seemed to signal the calm after a tumultuous tempest. Excellent. The following weeks unfolded in a haze. Faithful to his promise, Raymond acted swiftly. In just a matter of days, the entirety of Maya's mother's medical expenses had been settled. The burdens that had loomed over her like a dark cloud were lifted, erased with a few signatures and calls from those who owed Raymond more than they were willing to acknowledge. Yet he continued onward. One afternoon, Maya got a call from Thomas, who worked as Raymond's assistant. "Would you be able to join us in the downtown area?" he inquired. "Mr. Caldwell has something he'd like to share with you." Maya paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. After a grueling shift at the diner, her feet throbbed, and fatigue weighed heavily on her mind. Yet there was an unmistakable quality in Thomas's voice that suggested this was not a matter to be taken lightly. With determination, she slipped on her coat, hopped onto the next bus, and set off towards the address he had given her. Upon her arrival, she discovered herself positioned before a quaint storefront nestled on a serene street, the sort of establishment she had overlooked countless times without a second thought. The windows bore a layer of brown paper, yet a freshly taped sign adorned the glass. "Maya's kitchen is on the horizon." Maya's breath hitched. She pivoted gradually, her heart racing as she caught sight of Raymond in his wheelchair mere feet away, observing her with that familiar, understanding smile. Her voice faded as she glanced back at the sign, then at the structure itself. "Is this really mine?" Raymond gave a slight nod. I expressed my desire to assist you. Maya shook her head, moving closer, her palm resting against the cool glass as if she needed to touch it to truly believe it. I find myself perplexed. I do, said Raymond. I have dedicated a significant portion of my existence to pouring resources into pursuits that held no real significance. Structures, financial ventures, enterprises that changed ownership countless times. None of it ever carried any true value. However, this, he waved his hand in the direction of the storefront. This is genuine, something that rightfully belongs to someone who truly merits it. Maya glanced over her shoulder at him, her eyes shimmering with feeling. I have no clue how to run a restaurant, Raymond said with a smirk. When I began, I had no idea how to manage a billion-dollar enterprise either. You'll find a way to make it work. She released a laugh, brief and breathy, tinged with a hint of overwhelm, yet there was an underlying steadiness to it. After years of merely getting by, she found herself at the threshold of a fresh chapter, ready to embrace the possibilities ahead. As she pivoted to face the building, absorbing its presence, she sensed a change stirring within her. For the first time in ages, she found herself not merely gazing at a dream. She was experiencing it fully. After months had passed, the doors to Maya's kitchen swung open for the very first time. The cozy space exuded warmth, infused with the aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering spices, creating an atmosphere that felt like home, even for those who had never entered before. The tables filled up in no time, a mix of locals and travelers, individuals who had once been unfamiliar but soon turned into familiar faces. At the heart of it all was Maya, gliding through the space effortlessly, welcoming customers by name, sharing laughter as she took orders, ensuring that everyone who entered felt a sense of belonging. By the window, at his familiar table, Raymond sat with a cup of coffee, observing the world he had crafted. He had devoted his existence to the conviction that true strength lay in riches, in sway, in dominance. Ultimately, it was not wealth that had altered the situation. It was compassion, the kind that anticipated no rewards in exchange, the sort that occasionally transformed everything.